Welcome to the Get Over Yourself podcast. This is author and athlete Brad Kearns discovering ways to be healthy, fit, and happy in hectic, high-stress modern life. So let's slow down and take a deep breath, take a cold plunge, and expertly balance that competitive intensity with an appreciation of the journey. That's the theme of the show. Here we go. The Get Over Yourself podcast is brought to you by Almost Heaven, beautiful compact home use sauna kits, ancestral supplements, grass-fed organ meats in a capsule, DNA Fit, genetic testing for custom diet and exercise recommendations, Integro Health, high-potency liquid probiotic called Flourish, Organifi, organic powdered superfoods, delicious green, gold, and red powders, Wild Idea Buffalo, sustainable, grass-fed, beyond organic, and check out the bradkearns.com/shop page. That's my personal selection of favorite products for health, fitness, and peak performance. And here we go with the show.
Don't expect that it's going to be handed to you, but ask for help and be willing to listen to true criticism, because true criticism is constructive. Why are some people able to actually pull off the goal? So they come up with the idea, they see it through to reality. How did they do it? And how can I learn from the way they approach that goal? So, think back 20 years. We had cell phones, but we weren't using them as communications tools. We weren't using them to the ability that we do. So now my job is just really different. It used to be that I came in, I read out loud for a while, I went out, I did a story, and then the second I got into my car, the day was done.
I want to enthusiastically recommend DNA Fit, cutting-edge genetic testing to deliver a personal profile that will guide your fitness and nutrition goals. So simple, you spit in a tube, mail it off, and soon you get by email this super cool infographic where it delivers all these important insights and elements of your genetic profile at a glance. How you metabolize carbs, caffeine, vitamin D, lactose, and much more. My exercise profile was mind-blowing because it revealed my genetic muscular makeup to be 54% power strength and only 46% endurance. As a lifelong endurance athlete, I've been banging my head against the wall, training in a manner that was in conflict with my genes. Don't wait 20 years making mistakes like I did. Find out what diet and exercise patterns are most aligned with your genetics at DNAfit.com. This stuff used to be super expensive. It was a few $100s. Now it's pennies. Not really, but it's a great deal, and you get 30% off if you just put in the code GOY30. Check out everything at DNAfit.com. It's time for the Deirdre Fitzpatrick Show. Can you get a more fast-moving, high-energy guest? I don't think so. She is the queen of the Sacramento news scene. She comes off professional and clean. When you listen to the show, you'll know what I mean, and you will get lit up with motivation and enthusiasm. Oh my gosh, it is so fun to connect with her. She's been the anchor in Sacramento, KCRA Channel 3, for over 20 years, and she specializes in health and fitness and wellness. She has been a participatory journalist for this whole time, running the local marathon endurance races, even doing Ironman triathlon to her credit, and reporting on it, and bringing me on to the station every few years to talk about keto or primal or whatever I got going on, my kids' fitness charity. So we've had great connections over the years helping promote healthy living in Sacramento. But one of the things she's done for Hearst Media that owns her channel, and of course many others across the country, is be the representative at the Olympic Games. Covering it for many, many stations. So I don't know if you're familiar with how news works, but she'll do like a 1-minute segment live from Sochi at the Olympics or Beijing or wherever. She'll do a 1-minute segment like 48 times in one day, saying the same thing for Cincinnati and Sacramento and Phoenix and Portland. And oh my gosh, how can one person do such an incredible job? You will see that she has her act together. She has so many wonderful peak performance attributes and daily schedule things that I think you'll take a lot from. And guess what? She has her own podcast called Dying to Ask. And it's where she gets into successful athletes, authors, people in the community, and asks them pointed questions to bring out their success formula and really help the listener embody some of these things. So definitely go check out her podcast, Dying to Ask. In this show, we sit down and get to know her better. Especially interesting was her journey into her current role as an anchor in a top 20 media market, a very intense and competitive journey it is to get there. And the happenstance and the good luck and the resolve and all these things mixed together for a success formula, I think you'll really, really love. So here we go with my old friend from Sacramento, from the KCRA studios, Channel 3. That's where we recorded right after I did her show. I was a guest on Dying to Ask. So go start with that show and look at all the other interesting people she has. And then we go into it for Get Over Yourself. Enjoy. No, you don't have to wake up at 3 a.m. to be successful. That's just her game. 3 a.m. Oh my gosh. Here we go, Deirdre. Deirdre Fitzpatrick, KCRA,
Brad
Channel
Kearns.
3, Sacramento. I feel like we're already relaxed and totally warmed up because you're coming off a long, hard day of work here at 8:30 in the morning.
Yes, that's true. That's true. I get up at 2:25, so I'm a good 6 hours into this day.
And then I came in here to set up for a podcast, and we were going to have our fun. And then you said, "Hey, come on to the news." And so you just dragged me into a different room. We sat on a yellow couch. I'm wearing my yellow Ollie G sweatsuit that listeners are familiar with, website viewers.
A lot of yellow.
It was all about the yellow.
There's a lot of yellow, but that's kind of how I roll. I mean, I look for opportunities, and you were here. We have 5 hours of news to fill. I needed to talk about a podcast we had done, and I thought, you're here. You've got a great book. Let's put you on and share some information.
Incredible. It's always how you roll. Everything's last minute. There's no advanced planning.
No. There's a lot of advanced planning, but then there's also seeing the opportunities. So that's probably the thing that I'm known for, is seeing an opportunity and then turning it fast.
Yeah.
But I actually do a lot of planning. I'm a total planner, but then I'm also kind of an opportunist in the best of ways.
Right. And this is especially important when you're floating around at the Olympics, which is kind of your claim to fame here in a way, that you've gone to 10 separate games.
10 separate games.
So that's every winter, summer.
Yes, since 2000, the Sydney Games were my first Olympics. And since that time, my partner, Mike Domalog, and I have gone as a team to every Olympics for our company, Hearst Television.
And so are you covering it for more than just the Sacramento station?
I cover it for 30 stations.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. So we're based out of Sacramento. But when we go, we represent 30 Hearst television stations across the country. So everywhere from Boston to Kansas City to Orlando to Sacramento to Monterey, like all across the country. And so when we go, we gather information and stories about lots of different athletes that would be appealing to all of those stations. But then we also do live reports for those stations as well. So I will set up on what they call a platform, where they line up TV cameras from end to end. And I sit there for 6.5 hours doing live shots every couple of minutes for a different station. So there's a little dry erase board where they write down the names of the anchors, the station, the city, and then which story they want to talk about. And so that's what I do. And you might go and I do anywhere from 50 to 60 live shots in a day over 6.5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that funny? And
so
and each one has to sound like it's the only one you've done that day.
You're Cincinnati's best friend. Hey, it's Deirdre at the Olympics.
Absolutely. And you get to know them because over the course of a month, you're talking to the same anchors each day. So you get to know, this is, John and Lucy in Cincinnati. And yesterday they asked me about this. So it makes it really fun because you can play with them and you can have a lot of fun and make it personal. And that's where having that kind of inner competition comes from, because you got to make it a game. You got to look for the opportunity to make it fun.
And where are you? Oh, what was I going to ask? Sorry.
You're still thinking about 30 TV stations. Doing
that. Yeah. Wait a sec. I was going to ask. So each time you're on. And who are they? How are they introducing you? I mean,
So
the Cincinnati people have never seen you except for on the Olympics.
Exactly. So I appear for a month and then I kind of go away. as any kind of like special correspondent would. But, they'll usually introduce it. Oh, it's, day 4 of the Olympics in Pyeongchang, and West 2's Deirdre Fitzpatrick is out there. So, typically where I work in Sacramento, I'm KCRA 3's Deirdre Fitzpatrick. But they will introduce me as theirs.
You're more than just KCRA's Deirdre Fitzpatrick. Everyone claims you.
It's funny though. My kids, whenever they see one of my coworkers, they'll say, "Oh, that's KCRA 3's Brian Hickey." I'm like, "That's not actually our name," but to them, because they hear the branding all the time, it kind of is.
The branding. So, how did that come about? Did you pitch the station in 2000? Like, hey, maybe we should send someone actually to Sydney, or what?
There was actually a plan in place to send a crew to Sydney, and they sent three people, and I was asked. So I didn't even know it was coming up, but they needed somebody who was really resourceful and what we in my business call a utility player, which means that you can make something out of nothing sometimes, which is what we do a lot of the time. And so they needed somebody who could be very self-driven and creative and probably have some fun while you're there, because if you don't, it's a tough assignment to do. And so I was asked to do it, and I went, and it ended up being the kind of assignment that changes your career and takes you down a completely different path than what you had intended on.
So you're a known utility player in the news game.
I'm a utility player. Yeah, I would say that that's probably a fair statement. I'm a worker. I think I'm probably known as a pretty productive person. I'm somebody who has to have like a list of things to do, and I enjoy crossing the things off. And I love creating content. So for me, that's the fun in what I do, is creating the content and telling the stories and meeting people and getting to do something different each day.
As opposed to, is there another category of news person where they walk in and read the teleprompter, like William Hurt on the broadcast news with the earpiece going in so they can tell them how to pronounce certain words?
Well, I do have an earpiece, and occasionally I'll be reminded that I just mispronounced something. But yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think in any job, in any career, you have the people who come in and they do what's needed to do it, and that's fine. And then you have the people who need to do the work because that's just the way they're wired. And I'm wired the latter.
So how does that work on your day-to-day responsibilities here when you show up every morning for the news?
So when I show up, my day starts at about 2:25. That's when the first alarm goes off. And I spend the first hour at home prepping. So my personal routine, and I know you have a routine of what you do every day. Mine is I get up, I have some coffee.
There's no cold plunge going on at 2:25. You have my permission to skip that.
There is no cold plunge going on.
You have some coffee at 2:25.
I do, but occasionally there is a 15-minute workout to wake up. Sometimes I do that. I started doing that a few years ago, and I found that it kind of got my brain going, which was great, just to get the blood flowing.
Physical movement.
A little physical movement to wake up. So I do that, and then I spend the first hour at home, I read. So I read every newspaper you can think of online. I might watch the news from the night before. I catch up. I go through my emails to see what happened with our evening crews. I communicate with our producers. If I needed to, I can get into our rundowns from home just to see what's going on. So I come in, when I walk in the door, I know what's happened overnight, so I can sit down and I can start opening up the scripts the producers have been writing all night long, and I can proofread. So I always say I'm kind of like a glorified English teacher at that point. My job is to go in and look for mistakes, look for typos, as a veteran person, to look for contextual things that maybe do or do not make sense, and then to just suggest. So, but by that point, if I'm reading a story and I think, oh, that's not the right number, I already know it's not the right number. My short-term memory is remarkable. Long-term, not so much, but like short-term, if I read it an hour ago and I've read all the things that happened overnight, I can go in there and fix something in a script, no problem.
And then the script's going to appear on the teleprompter, so it's got to be tight, right? Yeah.
So my job is to really to put my voice into the scripts, which usually means it's tight, it's fast, it's super conversational, but also digestible. So if I don't understand it, then I have to rewrite it in a way that I'll understand it. And if I'm not interested in it, then I usually tweak it a little bit to make it interesting to me. Like if you had a health study. Here's an example. Like this morning we had a story about this new illness that's been detected in kids, and it's very similar to polio. Okay. So super important, especially if you're affected by it, but not maybe the most interesting to 9 out of 10 people. So my job was to take that story and make it interesting. So, I might rewrite it in a way that if you're home and you're running around getting ready at 5:30 in the morning, my goal is to make you stop what you're doing.
And excuse us all. and then get stuck in traffic because you got the story. And then you got to watch the traffic report.
Exactly. See, it's an evil circle.
It's all about KCRA.
It's all about KCRA.
Start and end with KCRA. I got delayed by Deirdre's fascinating story, and then I got a new route because I watched the little traffic count.
Right.
Is there anything like a insight that you have from reading in the middle of the night that you want to bring right to the front table?
Sometimes, sometimes I'll say, hey, did you guys see that thing about such and such? And the producer will say, no, where'd you see that? Oh, I saw it on such and such. Let's see if we can find it.
Brad Kearns texted me the previous night.
Sometimes that happens too. Like I have a good friend who is a pilot, lives in Lake Tahoe. And anytime there's any kind of air disaster anywhere in the world, he will text me what the pilots are saying on the pilot chat forums, which is always an interesting place to get more information, or say, hey, you guys should look at this, or that's just like the accident that we had in such and such. So yeah, sometimes there's a lot of that too.
So starting at 2:25, little physical movement, then you're just on. You're all over it.
The day is front-ended. So it starts off fast.
And then when do you go live in the studio?
So I'm typically on by about 4:50 or 4:55. Yeah.
And then are you doing repeats of the stories for the different news?
Somewhat. The shows have a different feel. A lot of the content is the same. We'll kind of massage it, rewrite it to give it a different feel in case you happen to have watched 4 hours of news, in which case I would say you should get outside and go take a walk as well. But yeah, you give it a different kind of a feel, but the content is generally the same.
So you've been at this here in Sacramento for
a long time.
20 years, did you tell me?
20 years, yeah.
20 years. Was this this couldn't have been your first gig because it's a major market, right?
No, what's funny? I've actually been doing what I've been doing, reading out loud, which is basically what I do, since I was 19.
Reading out loud? That's what you tell people on the airplane? What do you do?
I read out loud. Yeah. Oh, do you work at the library? No. I wish I did. That would be a cool job. But no, I started doing this when I was 19 years old. I went to school at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. And the interesting thing about the journalism school there is it's the only college in the country that owns an NBC affiliate. So
the college owns an NBC affiliate?
The university owns the NBC affiliate. It's called KOMU. And so when you get into the journalism school in your junior year, part of your curriculum, if you're in the broadcast journalism sequence, is you go out and you do shifts at the TV station. And so you go out as a reporter. So at the age of 19, 20, I was doing what I'm doing now. Now, hopefully I'm doing it better now, but that's what I did back then, which is kind of crazy to think about. I couldn't legally go out and buy myself a drink, but I was on television telling people what happened that day.
And that was part of your education?
It was.
Yeah. Getting units or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that led to your first job somewhere else, or what did you do from there?
So while I was there, I worked at a news talk radio station, and the station was sold 1 week after I got the job. And the station was sold to a man who then came in and fired everyone at the station with the exception of one person, and that one person was me. And the reason he kept me was because I knew the computer system.
Oh.
And I think I was making like $4.50 an hour at that point. So here I was the only one who was kind of
You there. What's your name? Computer girl.
Name?
You're staying.
Now, to be positive, everybody else was hired back on. But it turned into this really interesting opportunity because I went from working at this one little, very small, rinky-dink station.
Radio only, this is?
It was. To working for an owner that owned 5 stations, which meant that I was all of a sudden in a building with a lot of really experienced people, even though it was a small town. And so I did news talk radio. I did the news. And then one day they were looking for a co-host for an afternoon drive show on the AM station. And they said, I think you'd be really good at that. And I was 20. And I said, yeah, I'd be great at that. And so that was my first full-time job, was at the age of 20 while I was still going to college. I co-hosted an afternoon news talk radio program.
Every day?
Every day, so, Monday through Friday. It was fantastic.
And did you have some preparation time before you went on the air? I mean,
Not really,
big
because
a
I was
commitment
coming
this?
from calculus, so I really didn't. But what I had was I had a really remarkable co-host who was about 20 years older than me and super patient and kind and a wonderful teacher and mentor. And the truth is, most people didn't know how young I was. For a woman, I had a very deep voice for the age that I was.
I guess so.
Yes, I did.
Is that true today, or has your voice?
Oh, it's probably about the same. I don't know. But, it's funny. People, for the most part, didn't know how young I was until once in a while I would say something that only a 20-year-old would say.
Like, oh, my God, it's so hot today in Missouri.
Yeah. So that was kind of my first broadcast paying gig. And it was a really awesome, still to this day, one of the greatest times I've had in my job was working there.
What do you do on the afternoon drive time? You're mixing in with
interviews. You did a lot of interviews, which is where my early getting to ad lib and ask people questions on the fly came from. So I remember interviewing a lot of D-list celebrities. So a lot of people who had been on the Love Boat would come through Columbia, Missouri for whatever reason. If you had guest hosted on the Love Boat, you probably came through there at some point, and I probably had an opportunity to interview you, which was kind of cool. But you did that, and then you pitched to news, and some of it was just taking calls from some of the listeners too.
And then where'd that lead?
So that then led to graduating at Columbia, Missouri, and then I took a job in Des Moines, Iowa, and I lived in Des Moines, Iowa for 3 years, and I had a fantastic job there, and I was a weekend anchor there.
So when you're graduated, you aspire to a career in television. You're on this wild goose chase to find an open spot at any size market. And then I guess the ambition, generally speaking, is people want to keep going up to a bigger and bigger market. Yeah,
that's kind of how most people start out, I suppose. And my early ambitions were, I thought, it'd be really cool to work overseas, or maybe to work on a magazine show or work at a network. So those were, I think everybody kind of had those big goals. And then somewhere along the line, sometimes your life changes and you see that what you have is actually pretty darn good. So that's, to bring it back full circle, that's where the Olympic thing came in. So by the time I got sent to the Olympics, I had 2 feet out the door where I was. I was ready to move on and do other things.
Where were you?
I was here.
But
I never had any intention of staying here. This was going to be like a year and a half,
just
2 years.
Sacramento, as Ben Stiller said, a secondary market. Remember on the movie, what was it called? Brad's Dilemma or something, the movie title. Yeah. He goes, I'm from Sacramento. It's a secondary market.
I know. It's a best kept secret.
The audience boos in the Sacramento movie theater. It is the best kept secret. Look, we're here.
A great secret.
What, an hour and a half from the Bay Area, the beautiful city, San Francisco, and all that great stuff. And then we're a couple hours from Tahoe. It's incredible here.
Great. I mean, from a lifestyle perspective, it's been a great place, but I never had any intention of staying here.
I didn't know that.
So when the Olympic thing came up,
you went Des Moines to Sacramento?
I went Des Moines to Sacramento,
man, your
which
career,
at the time was a huge leap.
Sacramento's a top 20, 25 market.
20, yeah.
So how'd you do that, Deirdre? From Des Moines, they took a...
So here's how people used to get jobs in TV. So what happened was you would record
VHS tape.
Yes, you would. You would record yourself on a VHS tape. And you would you called it your reel, your resume reel. And then you would take these VHS tapes and you would borrow another VHS machine from someone and you would make copies of these recordings, right? And then you would mail these tapes out to TV stations around the country. And then you would end up in a stack of tapes. Like there might be, for one job at a TV station, there might be 200 of those VHS tapes lined up with just somebody's name on the side. And then news directors would sit there and they would pop those tapes in. And the average time that they kept those tapes in was anywhere from 5 to 7 seconds.
Seconds. Deirdre from Des Moines. Here we go.
Yeah. So they would pop it in, pop it out. And that's how people originally used to get jobs, 20 years ago. And so the way I ended up in Sacramento, I never applied for a job here. I had applied for a job in San Francisco through a friend of mine. Apparently that friend who didn't have a job open sent my VHS tape, to a news director in Sacramento. And at the same time, a headhunter from a media consulting company called Magid had brought my tape, same tape, to the same news director. So the consultant shows the news director. He goes, "Oh, let me show you this girl. She's in Des Moines. And she's a little raw, but she's got some potential." Popped it in, and Ed Chapuis, who was the name of the guy who eventually hired me, said, "Wait a minute. I've seen this girl. I remember I was in Des Moines."
I remember that 7-second clip.
No, you know what he remembered? My big red Eddie Bauer polar parka, which was the only thing that would keep you warm in Des Moines. And I only had one coat because I had no money working there. And so I wore it in every single time I was on camera. So he remembered it. And that's actually how I ended up out here.
So you came out for an interview, I guess. You somehow made it from the
I just figured
big pile.
I didn't even know where Sacramento was when I got that phone call. But since I was job hunting at the time, I had my Rand McNally Atlas because this is pre-social media and really using a cell phone to do any of that stuff. So I took my Atlas out and I pull out the California page as I'm on the phone with him. And I saw Sacramento, I saw Lake Tahoe, and I saw San Francisco. And literally I looked at him and I'm like,
wow.
Well, that's worth the free trip out just to look at it, if nothing else. And I came out here, and then that's how I ended up in Sacramento.
So you get interviewed, and what are they looking for? I mean, are they looking for your sharpness that comes out in an interview setting, just like it would for a different job?
Yeah, I think so. With my job, a lot of times, if you're going to be working on camera with someone else, you'll go through an audition process. So they'll actually put you into the studio and they'll run through a mini newscast with the person that you might be partnered with. And then they have you read through a few things and they look to see how you guys get along, because there are some people, you hear a lot about like chemistry, which is, in a lot of jobs, can you work well together and would you be watchable together? There are some people you put them together and you're like, that's just a weird combo. And then there are some people who it just seems very natural and you just kind of click. So that's one way people get jobs. The funny thing is I came out here and I never went through the audition process. And by the time I left, I already had the job offer, which was kind of a warning sign, truthfully.
They're so desperate.
Why am I not going through that? And I never had gone through it. And the funny thing now I know in retrospect was the owners of the station at the time were in the process of getting ready to sell the station. And so the job that I was coming in for was a weekend morning show, one anchor. And what I didn't know was that the show was at that point 5 hours long by yourself. And so had I actually gone through the audition process, I might have actually discovered that. So I've always joked, I'm like, I kind of got bamboozled coming in here, but it ended up being the greatest thing ever for me personally and professionally.
Oh, it sounds like the Malcolm Gladwell talking about these amazing opportunities that you fall into. And now you have to grind for 5 hours, which is going to build your skills so much more quickly than someone who's picking and choosing their spots and getting 3 minutes of airtime a week.
You're absolutely right. And, as an endurance athlete, it's the time you put in.
You got to go 5 hour ride every day.
Malcolm Gladwell will tell you it's your 10,000 hours before you get decent at doing something. It's not an accident that you get good at something because you do it a lot. And so for me, doing that 5 hours, when I got here and all of a sudden I find myself on air going for 5 hours, I developed a stutter, which I had never had before. I know.
It's the Sacramento stutter.
Super glamorous. But all of a sudden, because 5 hours, it was in my head and, it was just a lot. And so I had to figure out, how do I get through this for 5 hours? And so I would take the scripts home after a day of, sometimes struggling through it. And I would make myself read through them again till I could get through the whole thing. And I could pace myself to be able to get through 5 hours of scripts by myself.
You'd take the script home and read. You'd read for 5 more hours.
I would, basically.
She's listening to this, people. That's how you
Super
do it.
You really want to get into TV
That's
now,
how it's going on.
That's how it's going on.
Why are they only going for 5 to 7 seconds?
I think because it has to do with likability on TV. I think they have an idea of what they're looking for. It's a very, it's kind of a harsh business. And in some ways, there's an entertainment aspect to it because there's a likability factor. There's an entertainment factor. They can kind of tell if somebody has it. And they also know that it's probably about the amount of time a viewer is going to give you too. So it's a good test. If you're flipping channels, how long do you stay on each of those channels before you flip to the next one? Probably 5 to 7 seconds.
It might be good for the candidate to note that first 5 to 7 seconds better be kick-ass, too.
It better be.
I mean, if that's all you got.
Start with your good stuff.
Your first one's a rustling of papers and you're looking at your notes, then you're not going to make it.
Exactly.
That's funny. My friend covers scripts for Hollywood. And so he gets a stack of scripts as his job is to read through those, write an analysis, and then submit it. If it's good enough to pass his gate, he'll submit it to the evaluator to see if they want to do something with it. He says he reads for about 3 or 4 pages on average of a 120-page movie.
Isn't that just
heartbreaking? And then it's garbage can.
As a writer, isn't that just heartbreaking to think about?
It's shocking, and it's sort of like, it gives the aspiring writer hope that there's that much crap that's so bad that he knows already. And this is like one of the most powerful people in Hollywood at a minor job. He's the gatekeeper to all the crap. And it's like, you can't get past him. No one ever knows about your thing.
I'm the gatekeeper to the crap.
One of the most powerful people in Hollywood by definition, because he filters out way more than the people who make decisions.
I love it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so 5 to 7 seconds.
Start with your good stuff.
You start with your good stuff.
Be compelling and interesting quick.
You could even fake a 5 to 7 second thing, like breaking news.
And that's a good point, because I think that's where you get into trouble sometimes is now, especially these days, it's very easy to craft and create yourself to appear a certain kind of way.
Oh, yes. Social
in all
media.
of our lives, social media, the idea, your, what do they call it? Your curated self.
I've never heard that.
You haven't heard that?
Thank you.
So it's the idea that I tell you everything that I want you to know, or that I think I want you to know, but it's not necessarily the reality of what your life is like.
I see. That could happen in the dating scene. It could happen in the job market, the interview scene. Wow.
It could be happening right now, but I promise you it's not.
That's, we're striving toward higher heights here at the Get Over Yourself podcast.
Exactly.
We're going to get down to the bottom of it. Oh my goodness. So you just took a flyer and came out west. I imagine that's a big promotion due to the size of the market, right?
It was. And I think moving to California for me was just a really great change. I had moved around a lot as a kid, but one place that I had never lived with my family was this far out west. And I loved everything about California.
You came out here by yourself at that time?
I did, yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got some baggage.
I've got some baggage.
Kids. How did those come into the play?
So I met my husband here. And
on the set, or was he?
No.
Oh, that's a no.
No, he had actually never. He lived in Sacramento as well. He'd
never seen the news when he met you.
He had never seen our local news.
Oh, love it.
He had never seen our local news.
As soon as you learn that, your eyes brighten and you're like, okay.
Yeah. So I was at a neighborhood party where I didn't know anyone, but I happened to be there with a coworker from KCRA and my friend Jeff Ranieri, who, if you're from Sacramento, you might remember, he was a meteorologist. And we were at the party and he said, I've been looking around for you and I found one I like for you. And that was how I met my husband.
Who did Jeff said that?
Uh-huh.
Oh, what a guy.
It's kind of
That's
cool,
incredible.
Right? Yeah.
And he just dragged you over there to some guy?
Pretty much.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And that's how we met originally.
And now you got, how old are the kids?
So now we have 2 boys. We have a 13-year-old, just turned 13, and a 9-year-old boy. 2 boys.
So they old enough to wake up at 5 and watch their mom on the news? Don't care, sort of thing?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. Isn't that the norm?
Pretty much. Yeah, they're very, very unimpressed with me.
Yeah. Love that. So you said earlier that you hope you're better than at the start. You're doing the same thing you did when you were 19 years old.
Yeah.
And how does that happen? What do you think you're better at?
So I think that what's interesting in my business is how much it's changed in 20 years. I mean, technology has completely changed how we do things. So, think back 20 years. We had cell phones, but we weren't using them as communications tools. We weren't using them to the ability that we do. So now my job is just really different. It used to be that I came in, I read out loud for a while, I went out, I did a story, and then the second I got into my car, the day was done. Good, bad, or indifferent, the day was done. It didn't matter. And then the next day you hit the reset and you started all over. And now, because of the technology we have with social media and all the different media platforms like podcasting or any kind of like live streaming, you're never really done. And you're constantly in communication. And so now we are much more gatherers, and we have the ability to talk to people in a far more one-on-one kind of way, instant way, than we ever did before. And there are a lot of things I really like about that. It's made my job really interesting because there was so much stuff that happened, like say at the Olympics, that you never saw on TV because you only had a very limited amount of time. Well, now I get to take you back behind the scenes and I can show you some really cool things. And you get to see us in a different kind of a way. And so that part of it has been really fun.
Right. And the viewer now has access to so much more information. So has that changed the formatting of the morning show?
A little bit, because we know that they're not just watching us, they're watching us while reading something else. So what we know, I know. So what we know is that if you mean
it's more background now? Is that what you're saying?
There are a lot of different sounds going on. I don't know that one is more background than the other, but you have a lot going on. So what we know happens is the alarm goes off, people reach over, they flip on the TV, they pull out the phone or the iPad, and they start scrolling on social media while they're watching us or they're looking at other things. So, I'll have Facebook or Instagram or Twitter open, and viewers are messaging me or commenting on things like, why did you guys just say that? Or can you tell me more? And we're responding during the commercial breaks. We're having a conversation with them. So it's a weird, but kind of cool thing that it's much more of a dialogue. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think that's, the flattening of media.
It's exhausting,
seems to be right? It's exhausting and it's really disturbing. I have a lot of concerns about it.
I do
just
too.
The diversion of the attention span as opposed to sitting down and watching the news and being fully engaged.
B.rad, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
What are we going to do about it? Where are we headed? Especially with your kids coming of age now and they're plunging into this world so different than yours when you came up and had your afternoon show and you sat in a room and read a script completely undistracted and so forth.
Oh, it's not happening. Here's my theory. My personal theory is when I was a kid, my mom smoked. And she smoked around us because at the time they didn't really know how bad it really was. And I think that in 20 years, I think I can hear the argument right now at a Thanksgiving table. My kids are going to come to me and say, I can't believe you gave me unlimited access to an iPad. Do you know what that did to my brain? Or do you know what having Wi-Fi in the house was? I think they'll come back and say, you destroyed my ability to concentrate because you guys didn't have very strict parameters about that. I think that later on we're going to know, I think we're already seeing that in the last couple of years. I think we're going to know that not having some stricter controls about how we all monitor our access to these devices and to online platforms, I think we're going to know a lot more.
We're going to have the fallout.
It's going to be another way for our kids to blame us for something.
Wow, that's pretty heavy.
It is heavy.
Yeah, I completely agree too.
But
it's going to take a while to figure out the smoke clearing and the damage. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always tell my boys the greatest gift that I think I will give you is an attention span. So I'm a little bit more hardcore about turning it all off and I have a lot stricter boundaries around that in my life these days.
Yeah, I told my kids, so of course, neither of our kids will be listening to this, so we can speak freely about all matters. So nothing's off the table.
Who's your favorite?
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, I told them over and over, like my main battlegrounds were going to be the screen time and the healthy food. Yeah. And so I'd constantly offer commentary. I knew I couldn't control their eating habits, especially as they got older and older, but I wanted to make sure I was in their head, knowing like the consequences of your decisions and go ahead, have fun, enjoy yourself. This sugar will go to your brain and affect you adversely in this manner and that manner, and same with the screen time. But you can't, it's like a force that you really can't stop. I mean, some people can. I've heard
Right.
I remember one of the prominent authors in the paleo scene was giving a talk at an event we organized. She's like, well, my rule is it's my house, my money, and my food. And so our kids eat total strict paleo. And I'm like, I went up to her after her in a corner. I'm like, okay, come here for a second, girl. I got to talk to you. Are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
She's like, oh, no. And I'm like, how do you do that? You're my hero. I can't do that. It's like an avalanche overwhelming the high morals and values that we have as we're coming into parenting.
Yeah. And I think some of the stuff you have to learn it on your own or you're not going to learn it. You're not. Right. I'll give you an example because I'm so with you on the sugar thing. And I'm not all into the keto thing, but I am into eating real food and not processed food and eating in moderation, a little bit of everything. But I'll give you, like my kids, obviously they're kids, they love sugar. So Halloween, you can eat till you puke. In fact, I hope you do puke because you're going to remember that. And let me tell you, you're probably not going to do that again. So I have let them on occasion, knowing exactly what was about to happen, I've let them go on that sugar binge fast. and they feel it. And they're like, are you okay? I don't feel so good. Oh, why do you think that is? I think I might have had too much chocolate. Really? How much did you have? Oh, I had, however much. So I think some of it, like, especially, maybe it's especially with boys. I don't know. Maybe that's stereotypical, but I have found that they got to figure that out on their own.
Well, same with enforcing these strict boundaries and controlling mechanisms for the kid's life. Like we all want our kid to be either valedictorian and or Division I scholarship athlete. And we try so hard to orchestrate it. And it's so ridiculous. Now I can look back, my kids are 20 and 18. It's like these best intentions. And of course, we want them to be happy and well-adjusted and balanced. So you should be applying right now for that internship, all that kind of stuff. Looking back now, I realize how much less influence I really had than I think I did or hope that I did. And it sort of can give you a sort of sense of relaxation or realizing that your kids are on their own path already, even at 13 and 8. And setting the example, walking your talk, that's 1,000 times more impactful than whatever rules and regulations and speeches you give them.
Yeah, and I remember a lot of things from being that age now. Like I could look back and say, I remember when I was 13 when my parents did this. I remember when I was 9 and my mom did that. So now I have that in my head a lot of,
what worked and what didn't.
No. I just remember they're going to remember this. This is the one they're going to tell their wives that I used to do. So, what is it you want to be like? What kind of a parent do you want to be?
Yeah, perspective.
A lot of perspective.
Yeah, wow. And, if they're going to go and steal cars when they're 15, regardless of your best efforts, if that's their path and that's their destiny, I feel like there's a lot of self-determinism there that we have no control over.
Yeah, that's scary.
It's scary.
It is scary.
Yeah. But I mean, I think your original point is like people have to learn things their way, not necessarily the hard way. Some kids, I can talk to my son about this or that aspect and he'll learn it and embrace it and take it and run with it. The importance of getting good grades. If you want to go to UCLA? Oh, do you know you have to get straight A's? Oh shit, really? And then he just took it and ran with it, right?
Yeah.
But it's not all parent orchestrated.
Did you talk to your kids as adults? Like they were adults.
Treat them like adults?
Yeah. Not even treat them, but did you talk to them? Like, were you really frank with them about these are the realities, this is what you got to do? Or did you take a much more like, not controlling, but a little bit more of a helicopter view? Because I think that's a big thing in our society as well.
Ooh.
That guiding your kid to be a certain kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I recall having a lot of times where your morals and values are up against the reality and how to deal with immediate day, and then having a little bit of a conflict there of, I believe that academics should be completely self-motivated and self-driven, and they should pursue things for the joy of learning without any parent intervention whatsoever. And then it's like, oh, okay, so that's maybe not working so good in this exact example here. And maybe we do have to go sit with this teacher who, downgraded the kid a whole grade because their friend got in trouble and they blame them to, this kind of thing where, should I intervene? This coach is, directing some misplaced competitive intensity at my kid. Do I need to do something about that or sit back like my values and beliefs think that it should all be, left to the best devices? So you're kind of like checking yourself all the time. How should I handle this? How should I handle this?
Yeah. No, I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think, we're in the helicopter parenting age. It's gross. It's ridiculous. And so this is the 20-year, the 20-year checkpoint. 20 years from now, we're going to be like, oh my gosh, these kids don't even know how to change the oil in a car. I never did that either. But, it's a great example for you older listeners.
Seems like something you should know how to do.
Right. I just had Dave Coburn on the podcast. He's a parent of 2 national caliber, highly recruited volleyball players that both play for UCLA now. And he said, I didn't have to do anything. I handed my kid a ball when he was 2 years old and he started dunking on a plastic basket all day long. And his only regret was that he wished he'd made the kids read more because everything was all about sports. These kids were just consumed with sports, and they were all-American volleyball players and star basketball players all through high school. But it was interesting to hear him that he did nothing.
Right.
He was a champion athlete himself and comes from an athletic family. But so many people wish for their kids what he got dealt in his hand of cards.
Right.
But he claims he had nothing to do with it. And it's a pretty strong message to say, if your kid's destined to be a Division I scholarship athlete or valedictorian, my sister was valedictorian, I was not, nor was my brother, she was destined to be that way. And my parents just, had hands off. And those are the best kind of valedictorians, because now there's not just one, there's like 9.
Yeah,
right?
they have
at
like 9. I don't get
or
that.
13, and they all
Right.
give a 2-minute speech. So you got 26 minutes instead of one kid waxing on as we gaze over our stadium full of people and our opportunities for the future. But now with the 9 valedictorians, 2 or 3 of them are authentic, right? And then 6 or 7 of them were orchestrated by parental massive
social
influence.
promotion of it.
Right, including writing papers and doing that crazy shit.
In the Olympics, that's actually one of my favorite stories these days is following the Olympic parents. Like I usually get to do the Olympic
nice.
moms.
Right. You
dads.
find them and interview them?
Yeah, and it's always really fun to see it through their eyes and find out what they did, because you have parents who are kind of like what you described. Like I'm thinking of Carl Westenberg, and his daughter Kendall Westenberg was a skeleton slider in the Pyeongchang Olympics, and they're a family out of Modesto, great family. And their daughter was just like one of those great all-round athletes. And in college, on a dare, she went to one of those scout sessions for bobsled and skeleton. And they happened to be watching TV. They saw an ad for it, and her brother and sister dared her to go do it. And she did. And she turned out to be really great at it. So here's a really well-rounded person who just found out that they were kind of wired a little differently to go, 100 feet on your stomach face first.
Yeah.
And it created this whole Olympic career. But I remember him saying that, we just kind of supported our kids. We gave them opportunities. We supported them, but we didn't do the work for them. Because you can't teach people to do the work. You're wired one way or the other. You're either somebody who can apply yourself toward a goal and figure out how to get there, or you're somebody who has to be told exactly what to do, and you're probably going to do the bare minimum to get by. And that's what separates people.
You think that's unchangeable by parenting and environmental influence?
I think you can learn it early on. I think once you're an adult, it's a very difficult thing to change for people. And I think that's why you see so many people who get hooked on fad diets and on weird exercise programs and who are constantly in this yo-yo of life. I do.
Oh, right. They need some sort of outside force to get them focused or driven, because there's no drive that's just innate.
Yeah. And when you have that outside force, you never tap into your inner force to be able to see it through to fruition. And I think that that's the difference with people. Too deep?
Those Gretchen Rubin 4 tendencies, the popular book? There's the obliger, the upholder, the questioner, and the rebel. It's really fascinating to me to identify yourself as which one of those.
Wait, say them one more time.
Well, there's the obliger.
Mm-hmm. Is that like the yes person who just kind of
it's obliging society. So they respond to external expectations. So they get to the job on time. They're a good team player. The family can count on them. They'll help the aunt at the nursing home. They just respond to society's expectations. The upholder is that type A with the note cards and the super organized life, and they uphold to their own expectations. And then the questioner is someone who needs to know why all the time. They would get kicked out of the military quickly, right? But they're questioning. And then when they can get resolution, they can go off and do it. And then the rebel is the one who just answers to their own beaten, not off the beaten path, and doing things that are not. There's no expectations of internal nor external. They just go with the flow kind of thing.
Interesting. Can you be a combo of those?
Yeah, you have a combo. You have a dominant one, then you have kind of maybe a little influence of the other ones. But most people can take the test at her website and find out which one. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
You're describing your career attributes, and you're going to be the upholder. So you're completely self-directed and motivated and driven, and then you happen to be a marathon runner and all those things that are aligned with. Who's out there on the starting line running 26 miles? It's a ridiculous, crazy thing to do. And so probably that whole group is type A.
100%.
Or 99%.
Yeah.
And I got into this when I was racing and having the constant battle between overdoing it, having that misplaced competitive intensity where I was racing some dork on the bike path because my ego got in the way of my best laid plans. And so I was always having to check that and realizing that this type A drive and, you're so motivated. How do you ride your bike that far? How do you run that far? That stuff was a nothing. That was like a throwaway, obvious one for almost everyone out there. And then the nuanced attributes that were really, really important that was going to be the difference between 10th and first place was to be able to regulate the gas pedal and have a little bit of this type B influence come in where I could really teach myself to relax and sit back on the porch and read a book and not feel guilty or anxious that I should be doing something or doing yet one more workout. So like bringing that other stuff in to take your natural strengths, but then take it to the next level. And so like the next level for me was getting over myself, right? And just going out there because I loved it. I loved the challenge, but not getting too caught up in it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, how does that sound for?
For me, I'm struggling because I know you and I have had this conversation just personally over the years. I got into a lot of the endurance stuff because I met people like you living in this area and interviewing Olympic athletes. I would hear about all these incredible things they did. And
Serious?
Yeah.
You didn't have this going when you were a kid, high school running or anything?
No. My athletic sport when I was in high school was Irish dancing.
That'll get you in shape.
Indeed it did.
No joke.
Yeah, no, I did.
No jokes allowed or Snickers. You want to go try an hour of that? Yeah. My cousins did that in competition. That's serious stuff.
That was my thing. My parents are both from Ireland. Yep. Yeah, here we go. My parents are both from Ireland. And so when they moved our family to Texas, they joined up with the little, Irish Cultural Association, which was like a euphemism for drinking club with people who came from the town you were from. And so all the kids got thrown into this Irish dancing class. And then we would travel around to competitions and our parents would get together and kind of party for the weekend. So that was what I did. I did a little bit of I did track and field my freshman year in high school. I was a relay runner and I was really fast. I got put onto a team onto a varsity team, and I couldn't take the pressure being with older girls. And so I quit. So I never did any sports really in high school except for golf. That was my competitive sport. So I don't know. It's funny. Like I didn't do any of that stuff growing up. I got into marathons on a dare in my 20s. On a dare, somebody dared me to do it, and I followed through and I did it. And that was how I got started in it. So then when I moved to California, all of a sudden I was in the land of endurance and living in Northern California. You're surrounded by people who are doing interesting things. And it just kind of became a fun way to kill the afternoon because keep in mind, I'm getting off of work at 1 p.m. Everybody else is still at work. And so I would go out and I learned how to swim and I learned how to do triathlons. And I guess my type A personality, you start stepping it up. So you start with a short one and then you go to maybe like a half Ironman. And then the next thing you know, you're training for an Ironman. It just becomes kind of a way to kill time. And it's kind of fun. You meet interesting people and it's pretty because you're outside all day.
Okay, question. If there was a way to kill time for me, if we had to trade places and I was up at 2:45 and cranking through the news and having that brain firing at the highest level, I think a nap would kill a lot of that afternoon time.
Doesn't do it for me.
No nap? You're not a napper?
Not a napper.
Okay, so back to your schedule. You're up at 2:30, 2:45.
Yeah, 2:30.
You're reading, you're getting into the mode. Mm-hmm. Then you're here. When do you go on the air? 4:30? 4:50.
Yep.
Right. And then you're off the air at 8 or 9 now?
I'm off around, we're done about 9, and then I move into other projects.
Oh, so like the podcast
special projects. If it's an Olympic year, you're working on Olympic content. So yeah, variety of things.
And then you're out here at 1 or something?
Usually lunchtime.
Yeah.
Like around noonish.
And no nap needed? You're fine?
I don't nap.
And then the kids come home from school and you're mom for many hours?
And then I go into being told I'm the worst mom in the world, which, means I'm doing a
perspective.
Yeah. Perspective.
Ooh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Right. I remember reading something that kids, they want to push up against boundaries. That's part of their growth. They want to they want to discover who they are and form their own identity, but they're looking and welcome the boundary deep down.
I think that's true.
They need the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
So the kids who are, permissive, they can do whatever they want. They're missing that thing, and they're looking for it by pushing the edge, looking for the edge. Oh, the parents are goofing around and don't have that ability. Then they're
right.
They just keep pushing the edge.
Oh, I think that's totally true, and I think we all think back to when you were a kid. You probably can remember the friend you had in school whose parent let them do everything, and they had no rules. And you're like, that's the kind of parent I'm going to be. And then life happens and you realize you just said something that your mother once said. And you go, oh, well, here we are.
Oh.
So I think you're right. I mean, I think most of us want some boundaries to know that we're staying the course and we're going the right way. I think kids probably thrive on it. They thrive on the same things that we do. Eating well, sleeping well, getting good energy, having some positive feedback, trying things, failing things, learning things.
Sounds so
and
simple.
And having fun. It is pretty simple,
yeah.
Allegedly.
Okay, so you got into this endurance thing.
Mm-hmm.
How many marathons you done? How many triathlons?
So let's see, 21 marathons.
Wow.
Yeah, 21. As of next month, it'll be 21.
Oh, does that mean you're assuming you're finishing next month?
I am. Well,
listen to this.
There's no
listen
assuming.
To this positive self-talk. As of next month, it'll be
As of
21.
Yeah, no, of course I'm going to finish.
CIM? What is it?
Yes,
that's
CIM,
the big
California
race in
National
Sacramento,
Marathon.
folks. Yeah.
Yeah. So that.
How many times have you done that?
I think 14.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Is there like a cameraman
no.
running next to you on the scooter or something?
Mm-mm.
It's just an anonymous person in the pack.
Just me, just another.
Yeah.
Sweaty
no report
bomb.
at mile 13. No, nothing.
Nope,
You're not going to mix business with suffering.
No.
Okay.
No, just out for fun that day.
But that's your favorite run?
I do. I like it. I love the idea of running through your community. I love that I know every inch of the course. I'm on the board that helps put it together. So I'm really proud of what we do with it. It's an
incredible race.
Yeah, and we generate a lot of money for youth fitness programs, which I'm very passionate about. And I know you are too. And for other like running and fitness related causes in the community. So yeah, I've done that. Done a bunch of half Ironmen, and then I've gone to 3 Ironman competitions, and I've finished 2. I got kicked out of one of them, but that's yeah.
For profanity or
no, just for not
failed
being,
doping test,
not being good enough, I guess.
Finished 2 Ironmans on a felt bicycle, just pedaling away. Fantastic! Wow. And so does that give you some type of balance to the extreme intellectual challenge of your career, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably it's a stress relief. I love the idea of being kind of comfortably uncomfortable. I like the sufferfest. I like that feeling of pushing yourself and knowing that you still have something left to keep going. I think when other things in your life get hard, you can remember and think, oh, I remember how crappy I felt that day. I got through it. So I'll get through this. And so I think I get a lot of balance out of it. But I think for me, probably the biggest thing is it's a reset after a stressful day. If I come out of here and my brain is about to explode from being in a newsroom all day long, which is just like a high sensory overload most of the time, I go out and I run and I sweat and it's gone. And to me, it's that mental boost, reset, start the rest of the day, get into family life after that.
But the battery power to me is a question. Like, how can you do it all? Is there another component of pure stress relief where you sit in the garden for half an hour and knit or hit the sauna or something?
I read. I'm a big reader.
Of reading for non-work related reasons?
Yeah,
fiction
I love
or something?
Fiction.
Really?
Fiction.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she has time to wake up at 2:45, crank out many news channels, crank out big mileage, read for pleasure, parent your kids, then you crash out at 8 p.m. or what?
Crash out between 8 and 9.
Serious? So you're down.
I'm down.
Lights out.
I fall asleep in 5 to 10 seconds.
You've been to she did a sleep story at the sleep
it
center.
drives my husband insane because he's not a great sleeper. And so literally like I put my head down, I'm out.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, it's got to be related to the amount of
exhaustion,
the volume of work you did during the day of brain and body.
I don't know. I mean, or maybe I'm just wired that way at this point.
But
it's probably the reason why I've been able to do this job, this shift for as long as I have.
Right. I don't think an average person could take this.
I don't think an average person should. I mean, I don't. I'm not saying it's a healthy way to live. I'm just saying for me, it's worked. I did an interview recently.
Works for me though.
I did an interview recently with a psychiatrist for a story, and she was asking me a lot of questions about the time I get up and how much sleep do I get and what do I do. And after she had asked me about 6 questions, I thought, is she diagnosing me? Like, I felt like I was getting grilled. So finally I just said, I feel like you're studying me or something. Are you trying to figure out like what's wrong with me? And she goes, oh, I know exactly what it is. I said, well, what is it? She said, oh, you have this trait we call resiliency. And she said that in certain professions, they put people through these personality tests to figure out like, for example, in medical school, everybody goes through the same basic courses, but to figure out what's a good specialty for you, they do some sort of a test, and it figures out your ability to react to certain types of situations and like who's going to survive and who's going to thrive and who's going to like fall flat on it. There's nothing wrong with it. You're just, meant to do one thing over another. And so for people who want to work in like an emergency room, you need this resiliency factor because you're the one who's going to, oh man, here's another case that just came in and I haven't slept for 24 hours. You're on it. Your adrenaline is fired. You're clear thinking. You're ready to go. And somebody's going to be better suited for that than say they might be for like dermatology, where you're going to have much more just as challenging, but just different kind of schedule that would come along with it. So she said, oh yeah, you've got the resiliency thing. That's exactly why you've been able to do it as long as you have.
And I've heard talk about it, the resiliency gene, which seems to make a lot of sense to me, that this is just how you are.
Yeah, I think it's just how I am.
Yeah. And I think your kids seeing this example their whole lives will have a profound impact on them, but it may not, if it's not a lineup of genetics and environmental support, it might just be everyone's different.
They may want to go a completely different thing, thinking I watched that for
or be a different
years.
Person, just how they are.
I hope they are a different person.
Right.
I don't want them to be like me.
Yeah.
How boring would that be?
Yeah, and also
2 of me would not be good. 1 of me is plenty.
Well, on a serious note, like we already have a sufficient number of CEOs, brain surgeons, elected representative, the high performing, successful. We have a ton of wealthy people that are living in the giant houses. None of them are vacant. So, I think the kids should be free to, not have to ascribe to some expectation of society and figure out what works best for them. And I turned down a nice, steady, paved career path because I wanted to be an athlete, and it was much more of a struggle, and it was difficult, and there's all kinds of repercussions and trade-offs that you have. But I feel like I had no choice at the time. Like,
right.
And it's sort of like you have no choice to, you get off work and you need to clear your head.
Right.
You need to go put in a quick 12 on the bike trail instead of sit in the salon or take a nap.
Well, and for some people that nap is exactly what they need.
Right.
And that's fine.
And a beer and Monday Night Football with all the commercials.
Exactly.
It would kill me to I took my son to his last college football game. I go, dude, I'm out. We used to go every year on a road trip. It takes 4 hours in the stadium.
Right.
And I'm like, this is it. I'm not wasting another day watching these guys smash into each other.
Isn't that funny?
Tough.
But I think that's like your evolution of yourself as a person is you got to figure out like, who am I? And that's one of the nice things I think about getting older is you start to realize, that's who I am. I'm really not that person that I thought I wanted to be. And you have to figure out like, how do you want to do your life? How do you want to do life? And for me, this is how I want to do life with a little bit of everything, not a ton of one thing over the other, and hopefully some balance, and fun too. I mean, my husband and I talk a lot about that. Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? I used to hate that conversation. And now I'm like, where do you want to be in 5 years? What do you want to be doing?
What else is good about getting older in the news game? It seems like there's a lot of news people that have extremely long stints. And is it because the audience becomes familiar with you and so they don't want you to get fired for fresh new blood or something?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Jim Hill, Fred Rogan. I got to go down and visit my parents in L.A.
Yeah.
Jim Hill and Fred Rogan are doing the sports.
I know.
They did it in high school.
I know.
And Jim Hill looks the same. Fred Rogan looks like he's had many different hairstyles tried on and
he's one of
more tan or something.
He's one of the most remarkable people I've ever watched work. Can I tell you a funny story about him? When I was in Sydney, so it's my first Olympics, my first like huge, big, international, like a lot of pressure kind of job. And I just had the best time ever. And I was watching Fred Rogan doing reports for LA. And he saw an athlete. He's standing up on top of the building and he sees an athlete down below who he'd been looking for. So he took a microphone cable and he connected a couple cables and he lowered the microphone on live TV down to the sidewalk so that somebody could do the interview. And then he yelled the question so that they could get the person on TV. And then he grabbed the cable and pulled it back up to the top and finished his report. And I thought, that is brilliant. And I think I tell that story to our newer people or our interns. I said, there's always a way. There's always a way to figure out like how to fix a problem or how to get something done. So you have to think in a really creative way, whether you're an athlete or you're a journalist or you're a doctor in the field and something just goes wrong. You got to figure out a way to problem solve it. And I think that's like the fun part of what I do. But I've never forgotten Fred Rogan lowering a microphone down a building to do an interview.
Right. Because 99% of people go, oh, he's too far away.
He's too far away. I can't get him.
I'll send a text message to the Olympic Village. Yeah.
Right.
See if we can get him tomorrow. I'll try.
Right.
Instead of just make it happen.
I'll do.
Yeah, I'll do.
Some people try, some people do. Be a doer.
So if you have good inroads and a good start, is there an expectation that you can last for a long time in the market?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think there's any like given. I mean,
do people come and go? Meanwhile, while we have some of our stalwarts, like
I think I think there are a variety of things. I always joke I'm kind of pleasantly surprised every day the key card works when I come in, which some people are like, that's very pessimistic. I'm like, maybe.
Well, it's a good attitude also. You don't take it for granted. Don't mail it in.
I don't take
You're
anything
still here
for
at
granted.
3 something instead of 4:47, like, the average long timer.
No, I don't take it for granted. And I think there are a couple things that go into it. I think that the burnout factor with what I do is high. And I think some people are wired to be able to go the distance and some people aren't. A lot of people after 10 years, 15 years are just ready for something different. And usually they're ready for a different lifestyle. They don't want to get up before the sun does, before like roosters do. They don't want to work those kind of hours. They don't want to work holidays. I mean, I work basically every holiday but Christmas at this point. They don't want to necessarily be in that environment. I mean, it's not an easy environment to be in for a lot of people. So I think that's part of it. And then some of it is probably people, you find a niche in a community and it clicks. For whatever reason, it clicks. And so you have the opportunity to stay in a community for a long period of time, which is great. But then you have a lot of people who just kind of want to see different parts of the country or they're always chasing a different job or a bigger job. I just found the job that for me was the best job because it's a job that I've gotten to do lots of things with. I've gotten to travel the world. I've gotten to interview incredible people. I've gotten to try all kinds of different technology. I've gotten to work with some really good people who become really, really good friends. And so my job doesn't always feel like a job. Like 9 days out of 10, I don't really feel like I'm working, like air quotes working. I feel like I'm going to a fun place where I hang out with some people in the middle of the night. We get to write and we get to play with cameras and it doesn't really feel like work. And then you have that 10th day where you're like, that was work. That was real work.
Geez, we should record that soundbite for the college students. They're trying to choose their career. Yeah. Right? Because that 10th day, that's important to recognize. And I think I sometimes feel a little bit like we're getting too much blather out there and, create your intention and visualize your path and it will come to you and it'll be a dream and you'll be crushing it in no time. And it's
I don't believe that.
Yeah.
I don't believe that at all. I think you have to be very intentional about things and you have to set your own personal goals and you have to have your own standards for yourself. But if you don't have high standards for yourself, why is anyone else going to see that ability in you and just hand it to you? I don't believe in that at all. I really don't. And I also think that you have to advocate for yourself and tell people what you want to do. But you also have to have done the work. So it's not enough to just say, make a case, but make a case based on, what do they call it? The theory of the case. Like make a case based on what you've done and what you're working toward. And fair enough, if you're not ready for something, let somebody tell you, no, but I need you to do this. And then go do the work. Right. But if you haven't done the work, the expectation that something will be handed to you, that's what I always had. I had a big problem with The Secret. Do you remember when The Secret came out? The Secret was what you were just talking about. It was a really popular book, probably like 10, 15 years ago.
Nicholas Sparks, Sacramento, California. It
was a little bit before that. But The Secret was this idea that visualize, put it out in the universe, and it's just going to show up for you.
Oh, that.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, sure.
It was all over Oprah and stuff.
Call in the one, the mate of your dreams.
That didn't make any sense to me. I mean, really? I'm just going to sit here and it's all going to come to me? Didn't work.
That's not too funny right now. When we have this, I'm not going to make any rational judgments, but it seems like there's some cultural forces in whatever certain age groups coming up and thinking that the world owes them one. Yeah,
I don't believe anybody owes you anything. I don't. I mean, I'm a first generation American, so I always there were high expectations in my house that you would try.
and do.
Try and do. Yeah. And it didn't ever occur to us that we wouldn't.
Wow. Right. No other option.
Never entertain the idea that we wouldn't try or that we wouldn't achieve things.
Yeah.
We might achieve different things than we set out to.
Yeah.
But you would go out and you would at least try with good effort.
Is that your kid's going to have that takeaway as well?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I try to emphasize things like, I try to emphasize effort over the outcome. And I coach kids now in middle school running, which was like, man, that was an education for me and how to motivate people.
Some very difficult.
Fascinating. Middle school is like,
good luck with that.
Yeah. Well, I'm into year 2 with it. I'm starting to kind of figure some of it out, but emphasizing the effort over the outcome for me is a really great analogy for life, because we don't always get to the destination we set out for, but the journey can be what we make of it. And so that's just kind of how I choose to look at it.
Ashley Merriman, co-author with Poe Bronson of Top Dog and Nurture Shock, they were really big on that exact statement. And she said, I have a little nuance to add.
There's another book I can't write.
Yeah. But this honor and the effort, there's a Japanese saying, doryoku. I did a whole podcast about it where they, there's the honor and the effort. That's the most important thing rather than, judging yourself by the outcome. And Ashley Merriman added that we want to have that effort, but we want it to lead to improvement, because now we're having to look at just making the effort is not good enough. You might get your ass kicked, but you got to make an effort, evaluate what went wrong, what you can do better. Just like with making your case for the promotion, they say, no, sorry, because you're really weak on these certain things. Go work on those. So you're making an effort, but it has to be directed toward constant improvement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot of interns in my business, and I will help anyone who tries. If you come into me and you ask me for help, I'll help you. And if you try, I will help you so much.
Wow. But isn't that cool? I mean, listen, so many people want to break in.
Yeah. So ask for help.
Right.
Don't expect that it's going to be handed to you, but ask for help and be willing to listen to true criticism, because true criticism is constructive. So
what's that now? True criticism?
I think truly like good criticism.
Authentic criticism that actually is based in good judgment.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't
legit criticism.
I don't mean criticizing just to take somebody down, but to say that
when it's
doesn't
legit.
That doesn't work because that subject does not go with that verb. That's a fact.
Right.
So take it that way and learn from it and move on. But anytime anybody comes to me and they really want to learn, to me, that is so much fun to help somebody figure those things out and to help them grow. And so that is one of those things within my business now that I truly enjoy. So you talk about, having longevity in the career and what do you enjoy? I love that. I love the teaching part of it. I love teaching the context of what we do and why it's important, and why it's important to know that you've gone all in and to do everything right and to do it to the best of your ability that day.
Well, I like that when you said the 10th day is really rough, but those 9 days, I think we also want to put proper focus on that it should feel like fun. It shouldn't feel like work or a grind. It should feel like a good fit and you're feeling rewarded and just having a great time along the way, but also knowing that part of it's not going to be fun, but it's, a big picture perspective. Yeah.
It's unrealistic to expect it to be fun all the time.
Right.
It's not life.
Right.
It's not life.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I want to finish with this Olympic thing.
Yeah.
And what, being around those athletes and the whole pageantry and what impact that's had on your life. And I'm sure it's motivating and inspiring and all that, but you started in Sydney and you haven't missed a single one. You've been summer, winter pattern. Yeah. So it's a huge part of your life because you're building up, winding down, and then there's another Olympics coming up. What's next? I can't even keep track.
Yeah, it's funny. Tokyo, Summer Olympics in Tokyo. I don't know. I love everything about the Olympics, and yet there are certain things I hate about it too. There's the
bureaucracy.
I know, and I know you probably hate it too, having come from an athletic background. That part of it I don't like. But I do love the idea that people pursue these goals in sports that don't get a lot of attention. Like, forget the big name sports, like your gymnasts, your swimmers.
Oh, you're not worried about Olympic golf as a big...
I think they'll be fine.
Who won the gold medal? Yeah.
But I love the people who pursue things like the bobsled. You're not making money in the bobsled. You're doing it purely because you love it, and purely because you want to represent your country, and purely because you love the feel of going down a bobsled track. And they don't make a lot of money. They have a lot of sacrifice. They put their adult lives on hold for sometimes a decade to pursue the goal. They get attention in our country for like 2 weeks.
Well, your segments are 4 to 7 minutes. So.
I know. Then they go back to, kind of a life in obscurity. And I don't know. There's something about that I just love. I love following the stories. I love knowing how they do it. I love knowing the people around them who support them to be able to do it. I love how everybody gets into it for a while. I love the stories.
So the nature of your stories are trying to dig to get some personal insights from the athletes?
Yeah,
or what does it look like?
Some of it is trying to explain what the sports are to people who aren't familiar. I mean, I'm guessing, I might be stereotyping, you don't sit around and watch curling all the time.
I am a huge fan of curling, thanks to the Sydney brothers in Lake Tahoe, some of the world's finest curling enthusiasts. And I've done one open training curling session for all comers in Lake Tahoe. You can come every Sunday afternoon in South Lake Tahoe.
I just lost that bet right there.
Fascinating sport, yeah.
But I love it. But I love that that's what they do. I love that they go out and they do that. I think that's just awesome. So I love I love the backstories. I love following them. I love kind of handicapping them to see like who's going to go the distance and actually make it. And then when some of them are lucky enough and good enough to have it all come together on that one day and they win a medal, I love seeing them afterward and seeing how it just kind of changes something in them. It's just a really cool thing to see up close.
Well, keep it up, Deirdre. We love what you're doing here in Sacramento. And I didn't realize you were getting out to 30 other cities. That's so funny.
Isn't it?
Yeah. It's like the rappers when they do their little plug for, you're listening to Hip Hop Cincinnati 8372. This is Tupac or whatever. Someone got him in a room and he recorded probably 100 of those.
I've done that. I've done that.
Yeah. Thank you for getting it done. I don't even know what the theme of this podcast was. It was all kinds of life lessons and reflections, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me know if you come up with a common theme because I couldn't give it to you right now.
I'll work on it.
And I'm kind of the queen of the copy edit, and I'm not sure I could edit this one.
I know. I wanted to get you out of the high production realm that you're in and just relax and talk. That was my goal. So, and our podcast was great because I remember going off on a lot of tangents and then listening to it. It sounded like we were keeping to these themes, and you're like, "Oh, tell me about the writing again." Oh yeah, the writing. I know we're trying to focus on speed golf, but okay. Thanks for listening, everybody. Dun, 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 dun. KCRA, where the news comes first. Unless,
of course, you're listening to the podcast, which is Dying to Ask.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That thing is so sharp. I love it. I listened to Andretti and the author lady, and you got some. Tell us about the theme of it. It's such a cool theme too.
So the theme is, and maybe this falls into what you were just asking me about with the Olympics. I love the art of the execution. Like everybody's got ideas. I have ideas all day long. I have so many ideas. I have zero follow through because I'm doing all that other stuff you were talking about.
Yeah.
So our theme with Dying to Ask is, why are some people able to actually pull off the goal? So they come up with the idea, they see it through to reality. How did they do it? And how can I learn from the way they approach that goal?
Right, and you get these people trapped in this room right here.
I trap them, Brad.
You go at them. I mean, you have these questions that are leading to the insights. So that goal is always in the background of trying to pull what makes them special. Yeah.
Yeah. What makes somebody different, and like, why were they able to do it when so many other people just kind of talk about it?
So now you're in for what, a dozen shows now?
Yeah, we're about a dozen in.
Yeah. What's coming out for you disparate peak performers too. There's no category. They're not like health people or whatever.
No, they all tend to be people who have kind of a platform of some sort, so we have authors, influencers, athletes, just, different types of people. But I've found that like everybody who has pulled off something has got a really great backstory behind it. Everybody's got a really awesome story. So like we have an upcoming episode with a woman named Alexis Del Chiaro. She has a website called What the Fertility, WTF, really clever, right? And it was all about her struggling through infertility and then being surprised with an adoption, how the adoption came about. And then a week later, she found out she was pregnant after being told she could never have a baby. So, it's things like that, a little bit of everything.
How do you find these people? They're not necessarily Sacramento.
No. A lot of times I will read about them or see and
listen,
I'll email.
People, you get up at 3:30 in the morning and start reading.
I know.
Great things happen.
Great things happen when you read books. I email them, and most of the time they email back and they say yes. So a lot of times it's just reaching out to people, and it kind of gets back to what I was just saying. Like people will help you if you ask. People usually want to say yes more than they want to say no.
These kind of people that are doing something great, I find the same thing. And I remember reading, it was like Ferris or one of the prominent podcast hosts said he has a better success rate with A-list celebrities than random people when he's inviting them onto the show. Like they're like, sure, Ariana Huffington, sure, Tony Robbins, sure. But then, people that don't have their act together, I'm too busy, sorry, I don't want to, I'm going to pass on that. Thanks
the art
anyway.
Of being busy, that's so true.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah. And then they're generous with their time.
Right.
And I think it's because, especially with podcasts are such an interesting, like anybody who's listened this far into this podcast wants to learn something. And I hope you've learned something. I don't know if you have or not from me.
I have. Yeah.
You have? Okay.
Yeah. That's all that matters. There's listeners out there, but you guys do what you want. I'm into it.
I think that like podcast listeners are so different than even my TV viewers or your book readers because they come because they want to get information. And they want to end that podcast having come away with something that they can then apply to their life or not apply to their life based on what you've told them you've experienced. So I think that's why people, when they agree, like those A-listers agree to do your podcast, they love getting that message out. And they love that people really want to hear the backstory of it and not just the really short soundbite.
Dying to ask. We find it anywhere podcasts are produced. All your
usual podcasty places.
Fun stuff. With Deirdre and your partner, Jeff.
Jeff Mayfield, producer Jeff, we call him.
So he's a producer guy, but he's like also in the dialogue sometimes.
Yeah, he didn't plan on that, but I just kind of made that.
You look for opportunities.
I'm a utility person. I saw an opportunity.
Utility player, so Sacramento. Deirdre Fitzpatrick. Check out her podcast. Thanks, people. Thank you for listening to the show. We would love your feedback at getoveryourselfpodcast@gmail.com. And we would also love if you could leave a rating and a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I know it's a hassle. You have to go to desktop iTunes, click on the tab that says ratings and reviews, and then click to rate the show anywhere from 5 to 5 stars. And it really helps spread the word so more people can find the show and get over themselves because they need to. Thanks for doing it. Hey, how about a backwards commercial? Are you ready? So, go to OrganifyShop.com and enter the discount code B.rad for 20% off your order. That's ORGANIFI shop.com. Why would I do something as silly as a backwards commercial? It's because I'm positive you have to try this stuff. Trust me, order some now. It's going to change your life. Organifi is an organic superfood supplement company. They're known for their greens. You take them when you travel, get all your nutrition. But I like their top secret, Organifi Gold, warm relaxation beverage. This is the single best tasting tea you will ever try in your life. So if you want something soothing, delicious, nutritious at the end of your busy, productive day, pour yourself a scoop of Organifi Gold. What's in there? Turmeric, the anti-inflammatory superstar, is the base. And then, listen to this, smooth coconut milk, cinnamon, ginger, lemon balm, and 2 super mushrooms. It's legit. It's delicious. Check it all out at Organifishop.com, and don't forget to put in B.rad for 20% off. Try Organifi Gold. If you're not totally satisfied, send it back to me and I'll keep it.